So the government has issued an official statement. Let me look for the statement that was issued by the Interior Minister of Benin. First, we see that there's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Abuja. Nigeria condemns attempted unconstitutional change of government in the Republic of Benin. That's from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Then we have ECOWAS statement on the Republic of Benin. ECOWAS Commission has received with um, consternation reports of an attempted military takeover in the Republic of Benin. ECOWAS strongly condemns this unconstitutional move that represents a subversion of the will of the people of Benin. ECOWAS calls for the full respect of the Constitution of Benin and salutes the efforts of the government and the Republican Army in bringing the situation under control. ECOWAS holds the leaders of the plot both individually and collectively responsible for any loss to life and property occasioned by their action. ECOWAS will support the government and the people in all forms necessary, including the deployment of the regional standby force to defend the constitution and the territorial integrity of Benin. This is a statement issued by the ECOWAS Commission in Abuja, 7th of December 2025. So that is that. Let me look. There's a statement that was issued by the Interior Minister. This is a statement issued by Interior Minister. It was issued in French. This is the translation. Press release from the Minister of Interior and Public Security of Benin, Alassane Seydou. Beninese women, Beninese men, dear compatriots, in the early hours of this Sunday, December 7, 2025, a small group of soldiers initiated a mutiny with the aim of destabilizing the state and its institutions. Faced with this situation, the Beninese armed forces and their chain of command, faithful to their oaths, remained republican. Their response made it possible to maintain control of the situation and thwart the maneuver. As such, the government advised the population to go about their daily activities as normal. I thank you. So the Minister of Interior is announcing that the coup has failed and urged people to go about their duties. So there's this report from Kennedy Wandara, a journalist, said according to sources close to Benin's President Patrice Talon, the situation is under control. It's a small group of people who only have access to television. The regular army is gaining control. The city, Cotonou, and the country are completely secure, he said. Everything is under control. They did not succeed in taking the president's residence or the presidential palace. It's only a matter of time before everything returns to normal. The cleanup is progressing well, a military source told AFP news agency. Foreign Minister Olusegun Ajadi Bakare told Reuters a small group of soldiers had attempted to overthrow the government, but our forces loyal to Talon were working to restore order. There is an attempt, but the situation is under control. A large part of the army is still loyalist and we are taking over the situation, he said. At least 8 soldiers, at least 8 soldiers, several wearing helmets, went on state television to announce that a military committee led by Colonel Tigri Pascal had taken over and was dissolving national institutions, suspending the constitution, and closing air, land, and maritime borders. So, we see this was an attempt, and the attempt has clearly been thwarted by forces loyal to the president. So, we see Benin had history of coup in the 70s, 60s, 70s when they gained independence. They had history of coup. But since 1972, when Kerekou took over in a military coup, and then he transformed to a civilian ruler, which is the norm, which is what we're seeing in some other African countries now. Military will take over, and after a while, they will now change uniform and say, I'm no longer military, I'm now civilian. And then they will now contest. And so that was the situation. Then, before eventually he got to a point where he lost elections when he was forced to make changes. He lost election in 1991. Then, you know, this has been on and on. Then we saw that the current president Talon took over in 2016, and he's set to step down next year in 2026. So, once there are lessons here, we should note that countries around Nigeria are having coup attempts. Niger is under military junta. Niger Republic is to our northern border. To our western border is Benin. And Benin now there's an attempted coup. Let's not forget that in Nigeria there was the story of an alleged attempted coup. Alleged coup plots. They have not carried out the attempt. Some officers, as reported, were planning to carry out a coup. Then, allegedly, they said the coup was being financed by former petroleum minister, former governor of Bayelsa State, you know. So, and it happened that the former minister was away. Some said he fled Nigeria when he heard that the military guys that were planning a coup were being rounded up, you know. So he has fled Nigeria. Recently, I learned that he has said that he's not in a position to, uh, he's not medically fit to return to Nigeria. EFCC, the government has not come out publicly to say that there was a military plot. They've not said that, but several media agencies have reported that this was a coup plot. You know, the recently EFCC declared the former minister wanted on account of fraudulent transaction and all that. There was no mention of coup. So, but recently the former minister, through his spokespersons, have said that he's not medically fit to return to Nigeria, that he had gone abroad for medical treatment or something like that. The soldiers who were arrested, they are still in custody. They said they are likely preparing them for trial or something like that. So that led to change of service chiefs. Reshuffling of service chiefs allegedly was because of that alleged military coup plots. So Nigeria had this rumor, strong talk of military coup plots, and the officers were apprehended. But our neighbors are having military issues. Fortunately, our western neighbors have had a stable civilian democracy for many years. Last year there was also an attempted coup in Benin. There was a coup plot. The coup plotters were arrested. So this year now, it's like they went further than just plotting. This was clearly an attempt. They tried to breach the presidential palace and the residence of the president. They didn't succeed. And so they went to the TV station, took over the TV station, and announced on the TV station that they have carried out a coup. But forces loyal to the president were able to surround the TV station, and as I've heard, that they were arrested. So bottom line is that, and we saw videos of some people celebrating when the initial announcement was that the coup was successful. But then, what we should learn from this is that the civilian administration in Nigeria should take this as a warning, right? That they should try and do right by the people. Because we know that the military takeovers are often the military in countries that they've taken over, Burkina Faso, in Mali, and other places. There's usually a problem. People are not happy. You know, there's insecurity challenges in those countries and so many problems. And people were protesting, people were not happy. Military, they now took advantage of that and they now used that to take over and stay in power. So the civilian administrations, countries that are democracies like Nigeria, should note that military takeovers usually take advantage of certain things. So they took advantage of when there was an election and the results, like in Guinea-Bissau, allegedly there was an election and there was this talk of what the outcome would be. The military now took over. In some places, the election would hold, the ruling president would take over, people will not be happy, and people will be protesting against the results of that election. The military takes over. So Nigeria is having a forthcoming election in 2027. I want to plead with the civilian administration, the current president and his administration, should allow the democratic process to flow. There is no need of instigating problems in opposition parties. The president is strong. This president's ruling party is strong. More governors are joining the ruling party. The president is on a strong footing. When the president won in 2027, president was not in power and he won against the opposition, and he won the election. So President Tinubu can still win again in 2027 without having to destabilize the opposition parties. Opposition parties, you have PDP in crisis, Labour Party in crisis. That shouldn't be. The reason is that these opposition parties are the platform through which people can express their frustration with the government. If people feel the government is not doing well, they can now join these opposition parties and now run a contest in 2027 and now see, okay, if they are not happy with what the president has done, it should now be a referendum on the performance of the president. If people feel that, oh, the president didn't do well, they now vote to see if he can be unseated. If people feel he has done well, they can vote for him to see a continuity. you know. But allowing that democratic process to play out is very important so that people who are aggrieved with the government will let out their frustration and disappointment. They will let it out, they vent it out by going to the polls to vote, and not when you have a situation whereby the opposition parties are like in some countries. What they do is they now ban opposition parties. They'll ban this party, and leave only parties that are weak, so that the ruling president, the ruling government can just ride, take it, just win the election. Then when you do that, what happens? Those people that you have banned, those people that you have disqualified, those people will now, when they see that they cannot win legitimately, they can now start talking to military elements or people, and that can now build up to what could lead to a coup. So when the democratic process is allowed to play out, when people are allowed to express their views through elections, is a way of calming people down. When people feel their voices can be heard through the electoral process. But when electoral process is being turn in such a way that it will just favor the opposition, that is not good. The current president, President Tinubu, when he was governor of Lagos State, he was in opposition. The ruling party then in 1999 was PDP. He was not in PDP. He was in a different party, AC and ACN and all that in the West. He was an opposition governor when the president was in PDP. And then from that opposition, they were able to, after some time, after 16 years of PDP being in power, opposition were able to put their heads together and they saw to it that they won. And now opposition is now leading. So if now, as a ruling president, he should see that opposition is necessary. He was once an opposition party man. He was once in an opposition and he was allowed to exist. His party was allowed to exist. There wasn't issue of, oh, you go and close the secretariat of the opposition party, you go and cause problem in the opposition party. That is not it. Democracy allows a multi-party system. If it's one party, that is no longer a democracy. That becomes an autocracy or a dictatorship, as we have in some countries. That's no longer a democracy. Democracy has to be choices where you have different parties feeding candidates, then they slug it out in the election. Then those parties sometimes they coalesce and form coalition and all that so that to make an effective fight. You know, I don't think it's okay for the presidency to allow elements. You appoint somebody in a cabinet that is of opposition party with the sole purpose of the person destabilizing the opposition party, which is not good. Allowing opposition to thrive, allowing opposition to exist is one key way of trying to calm down tensions so that people can express, can vent out their frustration by joining these parties and having an, a realistic chance of being able to vie for position and being able to see to it if they can vote out the government in power. That's how it should be. So that's one. The electoral process, the election process, the democratic process should be such that people be allowed to voice, to let out their voice. That's one. The another thing is that the military coup, they take advantage of economic hardship. When the economic is down, when inflation is high, cost of living is high, cost of services is on the high side, people are struggling, the wages are low, when that scenario is playing out, military coup can also take advantage of that. Military coup ride on that public dissent when people are not happy. When there's the government of the day has low approval ratings and people are not happy with the government, the military they take advantage of that. So the first point I was making, the coup, Nigerian history has had coup. The 1966 coup happened after the 1964 general elections and the 1965 west elections in the western region. So it's one of the reasons they gave for 1966 coup, January 1966, is because of the elections that took place, the irregularities and the violence that followed. The Buhari coup, where they took over from Shagari, was because of the re-election that took place in 1983, 1984. And then there was a coup by Buhari. So we've had it in Nigerian history that coup do happen after elections. And when the elections are seen to have been rigged, and when there is so much disputes and irregularities in that election, military do take advantage of that, and that's happened in Nigeria before. So now, the second point I'm making